probably as much of an asshole as he came across. For every good guy, you need a bad guy to make him a good guy. Obviously, Brock, played the bad guy role quite graciously in his last fight. Do you think that's good news for the UFC?
I think so. It's the heavyweight class, I think they were building the whole thing between him and Frank again, maybe. And it's difficult to find with the UFC. They've had a difficulty keeping consistent heavyweights in there. And when you lose your champion, it doesn't matter what weight class. Even if you have a wealth of talent in that weight class, when you lose your champion, it's just a big hit to the weight class. And so him coming back, I'm sure the UFC was just cheering over that.
What do you think about that Bobby Lashley guy? He's with TNA Wrestling, and I think he's getting ready to dabble. I think, is he doing a Strikeforce deal? Is what are you doing, Brent? Do you know?
I think he's doing Strikeforce.
Yeah. Do you know much about him, Rich?
I've seen him fight, and he's had a couple quick fights, the stuff that I've seen on the internet and whatnot. And I think, you know what, I don't know what his wrestling credentials, his actual collegiate wrestling credentials were prior to his TNA career, but, he looks to be, he's a legitimate athlete, and he's, looking at his fight style, he's a very, very explosive athlete, technically a little rough around the edges, but somebody that I think could definitely develop into a great fighter.
Herschel Walker would kick his ass.
Oh, Herschel Walker's going to get his ass kicked.
Well, they're fighting in the same card, but not each other.
Yeah. Who they fight? Who's Herschel Walker fighting?
Kind of a nobody from what I gather. It's they're putting their money on Herschel Walker to win because that's the draw. Everybody's seen Herschel Walker's the draw.
And they don't want the same thing that happened with Johnny Morton, which he got knocked out in 1 minute.
Right.
To happen to Herschel
and you
Walker.
certainly don't want the same thing to happen to Kimbo Slice. Prime time, he gets knocked out.
Right. Now, what's that, Rich? What were you going to say?
I was just going to say it's Herschel Walker. I'll watch just because it's Herschel Walker.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartely. And Rich, let me ask you. One of the most exciting fighters I've seen come around in a long time is John Jones, and. Yeah. He got DQ'd for doing the 12-6 on Matt Hamill.
That was fucking bullshit.
Well, but it's a legitimate rule, and it is what it is. But John Jones, to me, is one of the most exciting fighters to come around.
Yeah.
Is that a guy that you see having a lot of longevity and possibly you fighting him sometime in the future?
I think, he's young. What is he, like 21, 22 years old or whatever?
Yeah. Stud. Stud. He looked good, did he not?
Yeah, he did. And so, this kid right here, as long as he can keep his head straight and not let any kind of like fame or fortune or anything like that get to him, and he stays focused on the stuff that got him there in the first place, then I see him having a long career in the UFC. Yeah, it's definitely a possible title contender.
It's weird. I was watching him, and his style is so fluid. It's just fluid. He just moves flawlessly. And when he got DQ'd, I was sort of like, I understand the ruling and things like that. And I don't know if the 12-6 has ever affected you, but, Rogan was saying how the 12-6 really isn't giving any more power than a side to side. It really doesn't matter. But, in order to get it legalized and things like that, they had to make that rule. That was one of the concessions. Have you ever had somebody come down 12-6 on you and does it hurt as bad?
I don't know. All that stuff is just kind of relative. And I don't think that the 12-6 is any more damaging than an arcing elbow there, other than the fact that, when you're, like, if you're mounted, for example, and somebody starts throwing an elbow, if you put your hands up in front of your face and there's an arc to it, then, like their arm is hitting your arm in a crossing motion so you can block it. But when you're coming down 12-6, you flat out cannot block it. So you got to kind of wonder, like, if that rule originally was set in place so that fights didn't end quicker. I think originally the thinking on the rule was that with the 12-6 that with wrestlers shooting in on guys, that is the back of your head is exposed, and the natural defense for a guy being taken down is to throw a 12-6 elbow so that you wouldn't get hit in the back of the head.
I thought the guy, though, in the decision of the DQ, I thought he handled it very graciously. I think that sets him up, for even a longer career by the way he handled, because he was a class act.
And being marketable about it.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Well, I agree completely. And the thing is that people know, aside from the DQ, people know how the fight played out. They know what really happened anyway. So, although it put the loss on his record and that really just sucks for him, I don't think that it hurts him in any way, shape, or form as far as his marketability or his positioning, I guess, in that weight class.
Yeah, but you're right. But that loss, you're right. But at the end of the day, he was undefeated. Now all of a sudden he's 9-1. On something that's sort of chicken shit. But I understand. But he's fighting Brandon Vera, I think, March 31st. How do you see that one playing out?
Man, Jones is tough. I've always liked Vera because Vera's really rangy and all that kind of stuff with his tie and everything. But Jones is he's just not the kind of guy that gets rattled really easily. And he fought some good names in the 205-pound weight class. Like he stepped up and he fought like Bonner early in his career and everything.
Yep.
And Jones is the kind of guy that he'll take risks in a fight. He'll do things like spinning elbows and whatnot. And he's just not at all concerned about that kind of stuff. So. This is a tough fight for Brandon. Really
now, Rich, do you see anybody that can beat Anderson or GSP? I mean, in their divisions, obviously. I mean, they're just mowing through everybody. Do you see anybody?
No, I don't.
You didn't know, not really.
Well, the thing is I'll GSP first. With GSP, he's fighting Dan Hardy next, and Dan Hardy. He does a good job of kind of playing head games and all that kind of stuff to try to take take your eye off the ball, basically. And he did a really good job with that with Marcus Davis. I think that he and Marcus went back and forth with internet stuff, and there were interviews and all that kind of stuff. And Dan Hardy really pulled Marcus out of his game. And I don't think that GSP is the kind of athlete that's going to let somebody like Dan do that. And so when you go tit for tat on their skill level,
right,
it's just not going to happen. And I don't see anybody in the near future in GSP's weight class. I do believe, though, for Anderson that Nate Marquardt is a good fight for him. I think even though Anderson's beaten Nate, I think that Nate's going back to the drawing board. He's made some changes in his game. I really like the way he's looked recently, and I can see that could be a troublesome fight for Anderson.
Can I ask you a question about pussy?
Pussy? About who?
About pussy. No.
You mean women?
No, yeah. Because look, here's what happens whenever a fighter loses or loses a couple in a row or whatever. There's always going to be people out there that go, I don't know, man. He's got this new girlfriend. He's dedicating all his time to his girlfriend or his wife or whatever the case may be.
Like Tito?
Like Tito, right.
Right.
Guys like that. Now, really, how much does pussy affect your fighting ability? I mean, do you get so wrapped into the pussy that you just completely stop training? Like, what's been your experience with, women getting your back and as far as pussy and that thing's concerned?
Good question, by the way.
That all depends because the problem is that what people don't understand is that, when you're prepping for a fight, it's not always just like Rocky IV, where you just go to the mountains of Russia and seclude yourself. It doesn't work that way. I get ready for a fight, and I still have to. I have to worry about things like paying my bills and all that kind of stuff, and arguments with the wife, and whatever. Maybe my mom is sick, and my dad passed away recently, and
trying to get some head from the old lady.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The night before the fight, I never do that, by the way. But,
right.
But yeah, so all those factors come into play, and the problem is that maybe the woman in your life isn't the thing that's really hurting you, but